multi-generational punishment. The information presented in this PowerPoint is an accumulation of peer-reviewed scholarly articles that talk about the different effects that children from undocumented families face. These are the contents that we will be covering in this presentation. First of all, what is multi-generational punishment? Multi-generational punishment is a term coined by Enriquez in his article, Multi-Generational Punishment, Shared Experiences of Undocumented Immigration Status Within Mixed Status Families. The term acknowledges the experiences faced by U.S. citizen children who have undocumented parents and are part of mixed status families. Additionally, the term encompasses the legal violence these families face on a daily basis. We'll start off with racism and loss. Children in mixed status families are faced with limitations and racism at an early age. For example, they're usually referred to as the derogatory term anchor babies, and are often seen as pawns that can be used as a backdoor to provide benefits such as welfare to their parents or families, which we know is not possible because undocumented immigrants are not able to apply to many public services. Their right to citizenship is also usually up for debate. For example, in 2018, Donald Trump considered signing an executive order which would end birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented immigrants, meaning that if you have an undocumented parents, then and you were born in the United States, even though you were born in the United States, you would not be considered a US citizen because of your parents' status. Laws not only penalize undocumented parents, but also their children by association. So for example, there was the Responsibility Act of 1996 from the IRA, which sought to impose stricter penalties. Additionally, post 9/11, many laws also punished undocumented immigrants by detaining and deporting them. Data demonstrates that from 2001 to 2011, the detention of non-citizen immigrants increased by over 50%. Even sanctuary states like California didn't provide full support for undocumented immigrants, as it wasn't until 2013 when Governor Brown signed AB 60, which allowed all individuals to get their license regardless of their status. And we know that a license is very important in California because it not only provides you with safety to travel, but also it is used as identification, and in some jobs, it is required for employment. Let's move on to economic status. So children in mixed status families tend to live in poverty. This is a result of the challenges the undocumented community often faces in the workforce. So for example, many undocumented immigrants work jobs that are deemed as unskilled and dangerous. So due to their undocumented status, they are also more susceptible to exploitation. And additionally, due to fear and confusion in regards to the law, many undocumented parents will not apply for public assistance, and this leaves their eligible children in need of services that like welfare or food stamps. And lastly, older children from mixed status families often find themselves working several jobs to support their needs and education. So for example, because a Social Security is needed for FAFSA, many students will either not apply for assistance because of the hurdles they have to face, or they will have to face these hurdles and struggle through the process due to the need of a parental Social Security, which actually they can input all zeros, but they also required a formal signature, which cannot be done electronically. So in comparison to other students with documented parents whose forms can be done online and signed electronically, these students have to send the forms, the actual physical forms to FAFSA, which can delay the application and their funds, which leaves them in limbo. Furthermore, in school, children at a young age are taught to keep their family status a secret, which limits their social and cultural capital. Now, this is significant because social capital allows individuals to access resources and create networks that will allow them to progress in the future. When you have, for example, when children have these resources and networks, these resources and networks can come in handy at a later time. So for example, a lot of first gen students struggle because they don't have these resources, they don't have these networks that will ease their progress into higher education. So when we talk about the importance of building social capital in these years, it is significant and it does impact them. Additionally, due to their economic status, children often miss out on enriching social and cognitive experiences. So for example, children that belong to upper and middle class families are able to travel, visit museums, and are assisted with homework, whether it is through their parents or through tutoring. So they are given all these enriching social and cognitive experiences, and it enhances their social capital, which in turn enhances their academic status and achievement in school. And furthermore, children in these families tend to be at a higher risk for stigmatization and bullying, especially if their parents are incarcerated. And these children tend to have more problems at school and are faced with negative peer interaction and stigmatization from teachers. And in these studies, actually, it was found that when a parent is incarcerated, not only is the child viewed differently by their peers, but also by their teachers. And teachers are actually more inclined to perceive the students as less academically competent than their peers. But additionally, teacher perception is important because it can set up the child for failure and perpetuate a system of inequity and equality, which we know is very normal in the United States. We have an education system that does not provide equality and equity for all students. So teacher must also acknowledge their biases, but it is important to be supportive and acknowledge the whole child and not limited to the perception that the teacher has of them, not limit them to the biases that are often attached to them, perpetuating this system of inequity and equality. The teacher must acknowledge the biases, but also must acknowledge their biases and acknowledge the whole student and the skills and the knowledge that these children bring, and use that to provide equity and equality to the student. Furthermore, in family relationship and attachment, it was found that children in mixed status families do have a harder time trusting, but this is due to the repercussions that come from illegality, and not to the environment that they are growing up in. Children that are part of a Latinx community tend to grow up in a supportive community. A study done on the Latinx community demonstrated that children in a positive cultural community actually had a higher secure attachment score than their counterparts. So families that didn't come from a positive cultural community. However, a traumatizing event such as having a parent deported or incarcerated could not only lead to a change in the family dynamics, but could also lead to instability in their attachment style, leading to a negative attachment style such as avoidant or just organized style. And additionally, the way that this impacts their health is that the most common health effects seen in these articles and faced by children in mixed status families were anxiety, trauma, stress, and depression. And these negative effects weren't because of their daily routines with their families and their interactions, because they actually came from a positive cultural environment. But these negative effects were a daily part of children's life and routine because of the undocumented status and the insecurity that comes from an undocumented status and the fear of deportation of their family members. So between 10 and 50% of children exhibited symptoms of depression. And as mentioned, this was mostly due to the triggering emotions that comes from the fear of family separation and deportation. So actually in one of the articles, Erica, a young adult, mentions how she felt when growing up in a mixed status family. And she recalled that when she learned about her parents' status, she was living in a constant fear that her parents would be deported, and particularly when they were not in her direct presence. So actually a lot of the children said that they were not able to focus in school because they fear that when they got home, their parents wouldn't be there, they would be deported and they would be left unaccompanied. And unfortunately, this experience is unfortunately not uncommon within mixed status family, as there are 4.5 million children who are part of these families. Which leads to the question, why does it matter? So much of this research regarding mixed status family is outdated and limited. This is important because without updated and further research, we cannot truly understand the detrimental effects of multi-generational punishment and how these 4.5 million children and their families. So without updated and further research, we cannot understand the new ways in multi-generational punishment is being faced by these newer generations. A lot of this information, as mentioned, is outdated. And when we have outdated information, we can't really apply it to our students or to these families because it's not relevant to them and to their experiences. Unfortunately, the perception of undocumented immigrants has led society and laws to fail to protect all the citizens. And while these children are US citizen children, they are treated as second-class citizens. And these children face racism, poverty, violence, poor health, and limited opportunities. And their relationships, more importantly, their relationships are torn and uncertain because of the fear and reality of having their parents and families taken away from them. Their experiences deserve to be heard and acknowledged. As educators, we must see the whole child and develop our understanding and our research to understand their struggles in order to provide them with equity and equality within our reach.